Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all enjoyed the one-turn playthrough I did of the VUCA simulations game, The Chase of the Bismarck, and appreciated there's a lot of steps to the game, but at the same time it all makes sense and it's quite an elegant structure, and I really enjoyed putting that demo together for you. The only thing is I didn't actually manage to trigger any naval combat. So this video now is really about remedying that and giving you a chance to see the surface combat system in action. There is, of course, also an aerial combat and submarine combat element to this game, but they consist entirely of rolling on a chart and taking in the results, as you can see from, hang on, let me lift my camera. The torpedo attack table folds air attack results into the results of the action. So there's no maneuvering of aircraft as such. You just send them in and roll on a table. Now, the surface combat system, by contrast, gives you quite a few options. Those of you who played the 1979 version of Bismarck, Avalon Hill's version, will remember that there was a maneuver gauge and there was a much more tactical element to it. What you see here would remind you more of an abstracted game. Any of you who might have played any of Minden games, Gary Graeber's Naval Offerings, will find a lot that's familiar here. So a bit of background. Those of you who know the Bismarck campaign very well will recognize the ships that have been lined up against each other for this scenario. And yes, I decided that although I was closing my net in the other demonstration and hoping to unite the two British task forces into one super task force to take Bismarck out easily, let's say that fate intervened, the weather closed in, we completely lost contact, and there was a bit of headless chicken flurrying around while we tried to find Bismarck and Prince Eugen again. And with the voice of James Earl Jones echoing in my head saying, "You cannot escape your destiny," I made the decision to keep Hood and Prince of Wales separated so that we could widen the search net. And on the 24th of May, 1941, because I'm sure even Doctor Who has had some comment to make about how you can't change certain fixed points in time, Hood, Prince of Wales, minus their destroyers, unfortunately, encounter Bismarck and Prince Eugen. So I have set up the game to play that scenario out. But I have made one slight change, because one of my big what-ifs tactically for this scenario is, what if the British Admiral Holland had been able to carry out the plan he'd intended to, i.e. that come the point of contact, it would be him crossing the Germans' T rather than the other way around. So on the tactical display board, I am going to start the British facing broadside to the German ships, because that's what Holland wanted in his original bit of planning. And the German ships will be steaming along, making this encounter at a bit of a disadvantage. And just to talk you through the words, just to talk you through the geography of the ship display cards, let's zoom in on Hood here because she's pretty. So it's all pretty straightforward. You have the evasion rating, which equates to the ship's speed in knots. You have a torpedo space for vessels that carry torpedoes. Now, somewhat optimistically, Hood is credited with a torpedo rating of 28, and I know she could carry that many torpedoes. I'm slightly less certain about whether she would have been able to deploy them all in the course of a single surface action. But this is a game that allows you to expend your torpedoes willy-nilly if you live that long. And Prince Eugen is credited with her fair share of 12 such weapons. So, okay, let's see how this plays out. It notes that Hood is radar equipped, and her hull strength and the strength of her primary battery and her secondary armaments are all marked on these sliding scales. Obviously, these rates will decrease as the ship takes damage. Hopefully, she won't take too much this time, but you never know. So just to back out again, As with the main game turns in the strategic game that's played out on the map, the players have to follow a series of set phases. The first thing that happens is torpedo attacks. Those ships that are equipped with torpedoes can declare a torpedo launch if they want to and if they are within range. Now, range is very important in this, obviously. You'll notice that the tactical board is divided into these rectangles, which have internal subdivisions. The dotted lines and the solid lines regulate the movement of the ships, but the big blocks are used to determine combat range. So what we have to do in deciding whether we want to launch torpedoes or not is count the big intervening blocks between the two sides, basically between the launching ship and the target. Now, the reason I have started the ships where I have is that that ties directly to the prevailing visibility on the strategic map. So the visibility level was 5 when the Battle of the Denmark Strait kicked off, or at least 5 in game terms. So let's see how many blocks of range we have between the two sides. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this game, that equates to long range. So torpedo fire is impossible at long range. So both sides are going to skip the torpedo launch phase. We then move on to the exchange of fire, and there's some more modifiers here. At long range, the ships can only use their primary gun batteries, so secondary weapons are ignored for this purpose. And depending on your facing, you may find you can fire your full armament, or you might end up having to fire a reduced portion of it. So I'm going to start with the Germans. The Germans decide they're going to split their fire. Bismarck is going to fire at Hood, and Prince Eugen is going to target Prince of Wales. So let's take a look, just to remind ourselves. Bismarck and Prince Eugen are pointing at the enemy, so bows on, it's going to be their bow gunnery factors. Let's have a look at them both in some detail. So Bismarck has a really formidable battery, combined battery, 8 factors for the bow and 8 factors for the stern. Luckily for the British, he's only going to be using her bow gunnery factors. And at long range, those are halved. So normally a ship rolls 1 dice for each gunnery factor it has. So at this distance, Bismarck is going to be rolling 4 dice, half of 8. And she will be consulting the naval combat table to determine hits. So let's pop out again. Now, as I do this, I'm going to be referring to 2 tables. One is the naval combat table. We're at long range, so that's where we're going to be checking the hits. And those are the various modifiers that we have to apply for such factors as range, vessel facing, whether they've got radar, whether they've got fire control damage. And there's an important rule we have to note. Bismarck, of course, historically suffered from an unreliable radar. So after the first round of combat in the game, she basically loses her radar. So she gets 1 shot with this stuff and then it's all over. I'm going to assume for this scenario that she didn't take a pot shot at Norfolk and Suffolk previously. So her radar is still operating as normal. Sorry, I keep zooming in and out. I should just leave it there. So let's do some shooting. So she's got 4 dice. She's aiming at Hood. And she's not rolled too badly. You really want to roll lower numbers for this game. Her modifiers, she gets a -1 bonus for her radar right before it breaks. In fact, actually, I'm going to apply the damaged radar token just to show that she's wrecked it with the shock of her own guns. She's not aiming at a ship that's closing or breaking off, so there's no modifier there. She hasn't suffered any fire control station damage. The visibility is 5, which is not great, so that adds another factor. So her total modifiers are +2 to her dice roll. So that means she has got, she has scored 2 hits. One of them is a special damage, and the other one is a hit on the primary battery at the bow. So I'll apply the primary hit first. So the way you mark damage in this game, because gunfire is supposed to be simultaneous, you use these red markers to record damage taken during the turn. And at the end of each round, the blue cube will be moved up to the new position so that for next turn, you know what the ship's remaining capabilities are. So Hood has taken a hit to her primary armament on the bow, and she's also suffered what's called a special damage hit. This usually is bad news. So I'm just going to roll and consult this chart. The Germans rolled a 1. Ooh, that was painful. 3 hull and an evasion hit. So poor old Hood takes an absolute body blow there. She gets 3 red cubes on her hull. And I have to draw an evasion rate encounter, which is one of these from the cup. So she's clearly suffering some flooding, and she suffers a -3 to her speed. So I'll just put there. Even worse, because Bismarck has hit her, Bismarck can now place a target acquired token on the ship. So in future rounds, she'll be able to shoot more accurately as long as she keeps shooting at Hood. Let's see how little Prinz Eugen does. So she's in exactly the same situation. She's only got 3 primary armament factors, which have to be halved, but then rounded up, so she gets 2 dice. So shooting for the first round, she's rolled a 1 and an 8, and the modifiers are a total of +2, so her 8 is a miss at this range. But her other roll, which is modified to a 3, scores 1 hull hit on the Prince of Wales. So she's got a bit lucky there. She's clearly hit something unarmoured and has been letting in a little bit of water. So much for the Germans. Now the British get to shoot back. The British are going to divide their fire as well, because although she's a bit weenie, I think allowing for the historical confusion that Holland faced, I'm going to make Hood shoot at Prinz Eugen first, while Prince of Wales is going to recognise what's going on and target Bismarck. So Hood is going to open fire. She is treated as having her full armament because, of course, it's simultaneous fire at the beginning of the round. So she is getting a total of 14 dice. The reason for that is because, unlike the Germans, remember Holland's historical plan has actually worked in this alternate universe, and the Germans are steaming straight into the British A arc, so I have high hopes for this. Now Hood is going to be shooting with modifiers of +1 because of the visibility. So out of what she's rolled, anything 7 or higher is a miss. So I'm just going to remove all the misses. So she's got a 1 and a 2 so far. I'll resolve those first before I do the rest of her dice rolls. So a 1 is special damage, modified to a 2 and a 3, beg pardon. So she has scored a special damage and a hull hit on the Prinz Eugen so far. So let me just zoom over to the poor Prinz. She's taken her hull hit. And let's just see what that special damage was. Hood rolled a 5, which is another hull hit and an evasion hit. So she's doing a pretty good job of working that poor cruiser over. So Prinz Eugen loses 2 points of speed. And of course, that was only the first 6 dice out of Hood's 14. So this is going to be... Oh, wait, no, I lie. They're firing at long range. It's not 14, it's 7. Sorry, ignore everything I just said. We're not shooting at medium range. Poor Prinz Eugen. Luckily, I caught that before I had strayed into the realms of cheating and helping the British out. So Hood only gets 1 more dice at this range. And she rolls a 5, which with the modifiers is 6. And that's a hit on the primary armament at the stern. So, okay, Prinz Eugen's pain is over for this turn. Oh yes, I forgot to mark Prince of Wales with the target acquired marker for Prinz Eugen. And Hood, of course, has acquired Prinz Eugen as a target. Lastly, let's do Prince of Wales. She has a total of 14 gunnery factors as well on the broadside, so halving that to 7 again, and she is going to try and hit Bismarck. Let's just move the camera over to Bismarck, who's looking all nice and pristine over there. Let's see if we can change this. So let's apply the modifiers and remove the misses. So with her first 6 dice, Prince of Wales has rolled 2 4s and a 5, which is, ooh, not bad. So she's hit 2 of the primary factors at the bow and 1 at the stern. This is good. Let's mark those. Before I do that, I've caught another important rule that I forgot. Sorry, everyone. In my overexcitement, I have forgotten that another historical problem, which is dogging the KG-5 class battleships, unreliable primary armament. Prince of Wales has to roll to see whether her gunnery factors fire at full strength this turn or whether they're halved. So ignore everything I just said. I'm just going to roll for Prince of Wales. She gets a 7. So it's actually not looking great. So at this distance, her regular gunnery factors should be 7, but they're halved again to 4. So I'm going to re-roll all that lot. There's going to be a surprisingly weak amount of fire coming out of Prince of Wales, much to Bismarck's relief, I'm sure. Okay, and taking away the misses, Prince of Wales only scores 1 hit. But it is a good one. It's a special damage hit. On a 5, it's a hull hit and an evasion. Oh, okay. Probably not that great. So, tiny bit of leakage. And Bismarck has to lose a bit of speed. No, she barely felt that. So that brings the gunnery round to an end. Of course, last thing, Prince of Wales has now acquired Bismarck as a target. So everyone's locked on and is blazing merrily away at someone else. No torpedoes have been fired. Normally, if anybody had launched a torpedo earlier in the round, you would resolve any hits now. But because the two sides are so far apart, that's not happening. Now we get movement. The question is, do both sides want to move? And the way you resolve movement is that you start with the slowest ship and move up to the fastest. So the slowest ship at the moment is actually Hood, who's been reduced to 25 knots by her damage. Holland is thinking they're not doing too badly, but it might actually help his cause a bit better, especially with Prince of Wales limping, if he takes a risk and closes the range. So he's going to order Hood to turn. And at her current speed, 25 knots equates to two spaces on this board. So Hood is going to turn and go 1, 2, entering a new range zone. Sorry, I'll move over so that you can see that properly. So just to redo that, per Holland's instructions, hood is turning to close and moving 1, 2. And just so you know where I got that from, that is the movement table where your evasion rating equates to how far you can move. So the next slowest ship is Prince of Wales, who with 27 knots available is can actually move 3. She could, if she wished to, overtake Hood, but Holland wants to keep his ships together, so Prince of Wales is going to keep station on the Hood. What are the Germans going to do? It's now up to them. They have decided that they don't like the idea of closing, so they're going to open their A arc. So it's a reversal of the situation we had at the beginning of the game. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. And there are 2 more steps to this. At this point, either side could attempt to abort combat, but nobody's really wanting to do that yet. And lastly, if there were any task forces in the same hex on the strategic map, they could attempt to enter as reinforcements. For the purposes of this scenario, everyone who's in that particular hex is already on the tactical board, so we won't do any reinforcements. So I am just going to take us to the beginning of the next combat round, where we start with torpedo attacks again, if anyone is able and willing to launch them. So looking back at these rectangles for these areas for measuring range, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, a distance of 4 between the British and German ships. So we are still at long range, so no torpedo firing is possible. So we're going to go straight to gunnery. I'll start with the Germans first. They are quite happy with their distribution of fire at the moment. Bismarck wants to get rid of Hood quickly. Before I do that, let me just do what I was supposed to at the end of last turn and just update these things. So at the end of each round, you remove the red tokens and cubes and just slide the blue ones down. And I'll do the same for the British over here. Okay. So yes, the Germans were quite happy with their distribution of fire. Bismarck is going to try and get rid of the elderly Hood, while Prince Eugen just keeps Prince of Wales busy for now. And then hopefully Bismarck will have a chance to turn on her if and when she finishes Hood. Now, luckily for the British, because Bismarck has opened her formidable batteries now, but it's still only 8 dice because of the range, so she's going to open fire. Modifiers for this turn, because there's been a few changes. Bismarck's radar has failed, but she's also acquired the target through visual sighting. So what we have is +1. The weather conditions are still not helping. So Bismarck opens fire on Hood. Let's take away all the obvious misses. So far we've got 3 hits on 6 dice, a 4 and 2 6s. So that's a primary armament hit on Hood's forward armament and 2 hits on her secondaries. Now this is actually very fortunate for Hood because additional damage to destroyed systems doesn't carry on elsewhere through the ship. So the Germans completely wipe out her weak secondary armament, but that is it so far. But unfortunately for Holland, the Germans still have 2 more dice to come at his ship with, and I'm just going to roll those now. Very luckily for the British, those shells just end up making huge, great water spouts next to Hood. So that could have been a lot worse than it actually was. Let's go back to Prinz Eugen. And she has a total of 3 gunnery factors available thanks to the drubbing she was taking from Hood a bit earlier. And she is going to aim at Prince of Wales. Same modifier, so it's a +1. One of those is a miss. 2 of them are hits. So, oh dear, she's inflicted 2 special hits on Prince of Wales. That sounds like it could be painful. And she rolls a 1 and a 3. Ouch, that's a total of 5 hull and 2 evasions. Okay, I don't know what she hit, but it was something bad. I'm getting the impression Prince of Wales is not an overly lucky ship. If high-powered 8 inches are doing this to her, it's not really looking good. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the game does apply negative modifiers for heavy cruisers trying to blow holes in battleships. Prinz Eugen has just rolled exceptionally well there. And I fear Prince of Wales is living up to the reputation she's going to acquire as not the most fortunate of battleships. It's all getting worse because her 2 evasion markers means she loses 4 knots of speed. I suppose we should be grateful that's all it was. That's a rather catastrophic series of hits. I can only think they must have touched off something rather vital somewhere, but can't quite imagine what she did there. But anyway, Prince of Wales is visibly staggering now. But now the Brits get a chance to answer this. Hood is going to try and take on Prinz Eugen and see if she can do some fatal damage. Now, she's in a bit of a bad way because her total gunnery strength is 13, which is not too bad because halved, it's still 7 if you're rounding up. So she's in with a bit of a chance. No, it's not. Sorry, she's facing the Germans. I do apologise, everyone. I keep forgetting rather important rules and then catching them at the last second. So no, ignore me again. Hood is facing Prinz Eugen, bows on. So in that case, her gunnery rating is only 6, which is reduced to 3. Okay, that's going to be a bit of a weak salvo, but let's see what she can do. Her total modifiers are... no modifiers at all. Everything pans out. So good luck, Hood. Oh dear. Most of those went into the water. She scored 1 secondary armament hit. But the problem for the British is that Prinz Eugen doesn't really have any that are worth noting in terms of this game. So that hit actually does nothing. So that was a bit of a waste. I wonder if Prince of Wales would do any better against Bismarck. Now, I remember I've got to roll for her defective armament, so here goes. I'm afraid that was a 7, so her gunnery factors are divided again. Now, she still has her full bow arc, so, sorry, her full complement of weaponry. So 9 is halved to 5, rounding up. And then 5 is again halved to 3, rounding up because of the defective guns. Poor Prince of Wales. And it's the same modifiers, so at least it pans out. She did slightly better than Hood there, so she scored a 2 and a 6, which is a special damage and a secondary armament hit on Bismarck. So some of Bismarck's 5.9s are messed up, and the special damage Ooh, 3 hull and 1 evasion. Okay, that was quite nasty. Bearing in mind that strategically any damage Bismarck takes in actions like this is going to cause her problems when she inevitably, well, hopefully inevitably, has to fight other British ships in future rounds. Now let's see what her speed is like. Oh, not too bad. It all adds up. So she's down to 27 knots now. And that brings us to the end of another round because nobody is going to be aborting combat. And there are no reinforcements, as I say. So this time I will remember to update the tables. So poor Prince of Wales is in a really, really bad way over there, at least in terms of her flooding, she is. Hood is a bit bashed up. She's seen better days, but could be worse, I suppose. Actually, given what things were like historically, it could be a hell of a lot worse. There we go. Bismarck is feeling the pain a bit, particularly in her hull, but her main batteries are not disturbed in the slightest. So back to the top of the round, and what are we to do? Neither side can launch torpedoes. As you can see, they're still quite a bit distant from each other. But, oh, do you know, I didn't do the movement last turn. Sorry, I am really making a dog's dinner of this. Before we carry on with the turn, let me see what everyone's going to do. The Germans, I think, are in a very good position, so they're going to stay where they are. Holland, I think, realizing that he's possibly made a mistake, is going to order another turn so that his A-arcs are opened. And both sides are just going to settle into a long-range gunnery duel because the range is still 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks of intervening space between the ships, so we're still at long range. So, okay, apologies for that. Top of the new round. Come on, Andrew. Let's see if you can get this right. So I'll do the gunnery for the Germans again. They are going to stick with their assigned target. So Bismarck is going to hammer away at Hood. And thanks to the long range, luckily for Hood, she only, I say only, gets 8 dice for this. Let's see what happens. So let's take those misses away. I'll just roll the other 2 to make it 8. So Bismarck has scored rather heavily on poor Hood. So those are the raw numbers she rolled that were hit. So that's a 50% hit rate. And we add 1 to each of them for the modifier. So she's got 2, 3, 5, 5. That makes special damage, hull, and 2 primaries at the stern. So let's do her hull hit. 2 primaries at the stern. And let's see what that terrible special damage was. A 9. A fuel point loss. Okay, Hood is leaking fuel into the ocean. Now, because I'm not playing the strategic element to this game, that actually doesn't matter for this one. But ordinarily, what you would do is roll a dice, halve the result, rounding up, and reduce the ship's fuel by that amount. So in strategic terms, catastrophic. But for the purposes of this battle, you know, we'll live. And in the meantime, Prince Eugen is going to blaze away at Prince of Wales. Ooh, that's a nasty set of hits. So she got, ow. So she inflicted a special damage and a primary armament at stern hit. Okay. I do hope the poor Prince of Wales isn't going to end this scenario being humiliated by a heavy cruiser. That would just be painful. Ooh, roll on sub-table. What's happened here? 4. Oh, thank goodness. Could be worse. A magazine hit was almost triggered on the sub-table, but because I rolled a 4 rather, nothing happens. However, whatever final damage that Prince Eugen did has opened Prince of Wales catastrophically to the sea, and she is now flooding critically, which means she will sink unbelievably at the end of this round. That is not good at all. Okay, things are looking really bad here. Right, let's go back to poor old Hood, who has got 12 dice, halved to 6. And she's going to make some holes in Prince Eugen, I hope. So let's remove the misses. Oh, she's not done badly. Five hits out of 6 dice rolled. It's good to see Hood is finally getting her eye in. So what do all these do? She has scored a special damage, 3 hull hits, and a primary armament at bow. So, okay. A lot of that damage is going to be irrelevant because just as poor Prince of Wales is beginning to lose way and founder, Prince Eugen has just taken a fatal hit from HMS Hood, and she is going to sink at the end of the gunnery round as well. So I won't worry about the rest of the dice rolls from Hood because really we'll just be shifting rubble on an already sinking ship. But what about Prince of Wales on Bismarck? Is she going to get at least one good hit in? She's rolled a 2. Finally, just as she's beginning to give up the fight, her guns decide they're going to behave themselves. So she's got 13 gunnery factors, halved to 7 because of the long range. And she is going to, whoops, if I don't throw dice on the floor. Sorry, excuse me while I scrabble around for my dice. So she is going to blaze away at Bismarck with what is her dying breath, and hopefully she'll do something to the big hulking German battleship. She really needs to make things easier for Hood. So she fires. And she has a positive modifier to her gunnery. Ooh, that's not bad. She's scored hits with pretty much everything. So let's see. So she has scored 2 hull and an evasion hit, 2 special damages, another hull hit, so that's 3 hull hits altogether, and a primary armament hit. So let's deal with all these in order, otherwise I will get confused. So 2 special damages, a 3 and a 4, so that's 2 hull, 3 hull, and an evasion rating. 4 hull and an evasion rating. Not bad at all. Let's just draw that evasion rating counter. Not too bad. It's all adding up. And what about the rest of the damage? We also had another secondary armament hit, which basically wipes out the last of Bismarck's 5.9s. And 2 special damages. Oof, 6 hull and 2 more evasions. I'm not going to bother with the rest of those because with an astounding final broadside, Prince of Wales has taken out Bismarck. So the big German battleship begins to founder and sink. So that actually has put a whole new complexion on that battle. Very weirdly, Holland is the last man standing in a somewhat battered HMS Hood, in a sea full of sinking capital ships. So, golly, that was a bit intense. Wow, I'm not quite sure I've had a battle quite like that in this game. It certainly wasn't the outcome I was expecting, but there we go. A lot does seem to depend on the positioning, I must say. Um, yeah, especially as I know she was firing with her full armament, but even so, that's quite an impressive series of rolls for Prince of Wales. No, no, wow. There's a awkward moment of silence descends on the field there. I think a lot of that final success with Prince of Wales rested on the fact that pretty much every dice she rolled was a critical hit or a special damage table hit, effectively, because that completely turned things around. Oh, do you know what it is? I have a horrible feeling I credited her with more dice than I should have done. Oh, no, no, I did remember to halve it. No, that was actually an amazing final broadside from a dying ship, which managed to take her tormentor down. So well done. So the Battle of the Denmark Strait ends with an incredibly bloody British victory. But that would end the game as a decisive victory for the Allies with Bismarck sinking. So there we go. Guys, do let me know what you think of this combat system. I'm sorry for the very flaky way I was presenting it. Take it as a function of how much I enjoy this game because I was I was getting ahead of myself, really wanting to see what was going to happen next. And hence my constant sort of forgetting rules, flipping past things that were very important, and often forgetting to account for modifiers and similar. But I really enjoyed that, horrific though the thing it represents is. And I would love to know what you guys thought of it. Comments about the combat system. What do we think about the ship ratings? I think there's fuel for a pretty lively discussion here. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. It's always a pleasure to have your company on these videos. And thank you for putting up for the duration, with the duration of this one, because I appreciate it's another really long one. So yeah, to all my long-suffering veterans who have been with me on this Bismarck-themed journey, thank you guys very much. It's always awesome to see you. To any bewildered newcomers who have stumbled onto this and thought, what on earth is going on here? Welcome to my channel. If it's VUCA Simulations, The Chase of the Bismarck that brought you here, then please do look at some of the other videos I've done. Or if it's wargaming in general, have a meander. You're more than welcome, and there's lots more content on this channel. But as always, whoever you are and wherever you're watching from, thank you very much. Goodbye, take care, and I'll see you when I do the final thoughts wrap up. See you guys again soon. Bye.